Welcome to Fitness Casual. We help you ditch diets and build habits. I'm Andrew Hayes. With me is the not so picky eater, Kat Best.
Hello, hello.
And we also have a special guest today, Lauren Kelly.
Hello, happy to be here.
Lauren, will go to your bio in a second, but we always start with a hot start. So I'd love to know, is there a food that you don't eat, even as an adult?
I would say melon is probably my least favorite, quote, healthier food. It's just something I'll eat if I need to, but I'm not a big fan.
Like just the green honeydew
The
melon?
green honeydew melon. Yeah.
Okay.
Not my fave.
That's at every like hotel breakfast bar in America, and someone once told me it's a filler fruit and no one actually eats it, and now I can't unsee that. I think I agree
That'll
with you.
stick with me too.
Kat, what about you?
I had a hard time with this one, but one thing I have no interest in eating is eggplant. No interest.
That's a good
Never
one.
been into it. Nothing does nothing for me. But
Mm.
if it was served to me, I'd eat it. I'm not against it. Not gross. I have nothing that I would be absolutely against eating that's so gross, but I'm just selective because I like healthy stuff. But eggplant kind of was the only thing that came to mind.
Not because it's a nightshade. You're not like Tom Brady.
No.
Just because-
No, I eat a lot of peppers, which are also nightshades. A lot of potatoes, those are also nightshades.
That's right.
But no, eggplant just does not do it for me.
You and my wife both. I also find it very intimidating. It's very large at the grocery store. You're like, what am I going to do with this?
Seeds.
It's slippery a lot of the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever cooked it. Have you, Lauren? I've eaten
It's
it.
been a
but-
long time. I actually should change my answer to cats because I'm I could eat the melon if it was there, but eggplant would be the lowest on my priority.
Yeah.
That's such a good call.
Yeah, interesting. I was growing up in an Italian family. I definitely ate it a lot, but I would be shocked if my kids ate eggplant, which we'll talk about today.
I was gonna say when I was a vegetarian, eggplant is a meat substitute for a lot of things, because it's
Got that umami.
yeah, it has that, and it's just I never really liked it that much, but it was in so many vegetarian recipes.
Well, mine, I would say it's tough. I don't have many things either that I don't eat, but I'm not a huge fan of pine nuts, in particular raw pine nuts.
Oh wow.
Oh, wow. Audible gasps from
I don't think I've
Love
ever eaten
pine nuts
pine
so
nuts alone in my life. They're just in things at restaurants, but I've never bought them to use.
Yeah, I think if they're toasted and they're in a really large salad, I kind of ignore them, and I know the health benefits, but if they're a main ingredient, if it's just rice and pine nuts, for instance, I find it
What?
very... there's been instances
Like a
where it's...
couscous with pine nuts I could see too.
Wow.
There you go. Exactly. So that's but again, I'm not opposed. It's just I would never go out of my way to cook them at home.
Do
I
you
think they're
like
weird.
sunflower seeds?
I do. And
Okay.
pumpkin seeds.
Yeah, interesting. You know about pine nut mouth? There's something where when people eat pine nuts, their mouth tastes like pine nuts for years. It's
I think
there's something weird about it. Maybe that's not exactly what happens, but there's something very strange about pine nuts, and pine nut mouth is a thing.
Oh my
I
God,
think
have to
that's
Google
what it is. I'm Googling it now. It says pine nut mouth, aka pine nut syndrome, is a temporary taste disturbance characterized by a persistent bitter or metallic taste. That's what it is.
Yeah, brutal.
I have that.
That's what you get?
Yeah, that's exactly what it Wow.
So
There we
you're
go.
not a
Cat.
fan.
Diagnosed.
Speaking fellow Italian, pinoli cookies, you're not a fan?
Oh, yeah.
That's my
Yeah.
favorite probably
I hate
cookie in the
those.
world.
Yeah.
I know.
Wow. I guess I'll
adore
just have
them.
to be 100% Irish now. It's a shame. Anyway, well, we are joined by Lauren Kelly today, and I will let you add some color to your bio here, Lauren. But you are a mom of two beautiful boys and wife to your amazing husband, Tommy, who's also the founder of Sound Tea, which is a product that Kat and I love very much because it is sugar-free. And you have been a registered dietitian for 15 years. You also have a holistic approach when it comes to nutrition, which is something that is near and dear to our hearts. So you believe in, if you want to reach a health outcome, yes, nutrition is a very important piece of the puzzle, as is stress, as is sleep, as is movement. And you speak on various nutrition topics. You've done corporate settings, you've worked with brands, you do nutrition education, partnerships. And so you're here today to help us with a topic that we are not as well versed in as you, which is pediatric nutrition in particular, building good habits for kids, which is something that we see turn into habits for adults.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you. Yeah, this is one of my favorite topics. I always say my two favorite things to talk about are nutrition and like my children or kids, like those sort of topics as a mom and a young mom. So I love it.
Awesome.
Let's dive in.
Yeah, so we want to start with why this matters. And we coach not exclusively busy parents, but a lot of busy parents. And we're really big on making it an achievable lifestyle. Like, we're not here to say throw out everything or make your kids only eat kale salads. But this is something that's important to address now. And so we want to make sure everyone knows the long view. Why is this something we should address today with young kids? Why is this important, Lauren?
Yeah, so there's a few reasons I would say to start out. And of course, like I agree with you. I think a lot of the times when we talk about this, you know, maybe somebody's like, oh my God, I can't believe your kid eats that. And then the assumption is like they only eat like fruits and vegetables and like never have a cracker or anything like that. And it's about meeting people where they are. But, you know, one of the reasons would be because all of the nutrition that our body needs to flourish, so to grow, to have our brain working optimally, to have our digestion working optimally, is going to be from those fruits and vegetables, colorful foods, the protein-rich foods, you know, the animal protein, a lot of things that come from animal. That's going to help our muscles be strong. And also there are the building blocks for all of our tissues, which are our organs, our whole entire body. And then not to mention, like, then as they get older, I think socially it can be challenging if you're a super picky eater. And we mentioned metabolism, but I think that digestion is something we were kind of talking about a little bit before this podcast started, but it's a struggle for so many, whether it's gas or bloating or constipation. And I think if we're not incorporating enough fiber and also fluids into our diet from a young age, that can become even more challenging as an adult. And then those issues can get worse too.
Absolutely. And we see a lot of these patterns in clients that we coach have been instilled for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. And so the earlier you can address them, the less it becomes ingrained in you as an adult, because it's a lot harder to change when we're grown-ups, so to speak. Right?
Yeah.
It's also weird that adults who are picky eaters, we kind of like leave it like, oh, you don't like that, okay, no problem. But with a kid, we're like trying to work on it. So like, why do it, like, adults get this pass of like, oh, if you don't like that, cool, no problem.
Right.
It's like this weird thing. And sometimes I do work with adults who are very picky, and it's kind of like, do I try to get them to work on this, or do we just acknowledge that as a boundary? Whereas kids, it's like you are always trying to get them to work on it. So it's like that weird difference between being a kid and an adult. But I think like anything we're about to talk today will still work if you're an adult, if you're a picky eater.
Yeah, I think it's such a good call. You know, it's like you got to sometimes do the hard thing to get the outcome that you want. And like, if that hard thing is, you know, having a smoothie that has a little cauliflower rice in it or like a little spinach that maybe you wouldn't just sit down and eat. You're not a big fan of like having roasted cauliflower or whatever in your diet. Like, you got to try it out for a little while and see how you feel. And then when you see how good you can feel, then maybe you're more inclined to incorporate those foods. Or, you know, your taste buds change. Like, practicing that for a few weeks can lead to you having a more evolved palate, you know? And it's the same with kids.
Yep. I have multiple friends who don't eat vegetables. And obviously there's the whole carnivore diet, which we won't get into. Yeah. But it's funny, in the short term, you can see a lot of results with like weight loss, body composition, whatever. But thinking again, long term, not eating a vegetable will cover some of the downsides of that today, and why it's important to instill that in your kids as young as you can. Before we get into Lauren's 10 tips, I want to touch on that too, which is one of the best parenting advice tips I've ever heard in my whole life was don't catastrophize. Or Lauren, as you said when we were prepping for this, don't be disgruntled. I've had so many phases already in just like the 6 years of being a parent, like bedwetting, biting, violence. And it's so easy as a parent to be like, oh my God, my kid's going to grow up and be the class bully, or like they're going to pee their pants until they're 50. And it's like, these are all phases. And at any point we can intervene, and we can do it in a way that isn't in panic mode. And so if you are listening to this today and your kids exclusively eat beige food and they're 10 years old and they've never touched a vegetable, that's okay. Like, you're still intervening very early. I never heard of fiber until I was like 30 years old. So it's okay. And so we're here today to help you implement these slowly over time. Please don't panic or feel bad about yourself or think it's too late or anything like that. Lauren and Kat, you guys agree?
No, 100%. And it's such a good point. Like, I think, your kids, just like we do, we go through phases. Like, maybe also even just with the food that they do like. Maybe they were eating eggs like every morning for breakfast or whatever. And then they're like, I don't want eggs anymore. And you're like, you know what? If I ate eggs every day, like for 3 months, maybe I'd get sick of it too. And like, it's okay. Move on and you can come back to it. And to your point about salad, like I think about that too. I'm like, I probably didn't eat a salad until I was in my teens, and that's okay. Like things can change and evolve. Um, and I could share some like specific examples of things that I've experienced with my kids, but we can talk on it during the points if that makes more sense.
Definitely. Real quick, we wanted to touch on kids under 2. Most of the tips we'll cover today, the 10 tips, I think, are for kids older than 2. But real quick, if your kid is under 2, great. That's a great time to be listening. Lauren, what are some top things to address that young?
Yeah, the biggest thing is you can help. They're going to be so much more receptive to anything that you give them during this like 2-year window. And so as much variability as you can, I think is the most important. So I can dive into a few of the tips, I think, but I would say what you're eating, if it's appropriate and okay for them, like safety wise to eat it, give it to them too, to try. I would say make sure that once they are starting to show signs of interest in being independent, like around that 1-year age, and they want to feed themselves, let them, because I think that just helps them feel that much more confident around eating. There's a great app called Solid Starts, which I found to be super helpful for me, who was a little bit more I would say one of my primary parenting concerns was choking. And so I would worry a lot about that, especially with my first. And so with my second, the Solid Starts app was really helpful in helping to, make me feel more comfortable giving him the independence that I think only helps with more food acceptance.
Fantastic. Mm-hmm. All right. We're going to go into the 10 or so tips that you've put together. Mm-hmm. One of the things we want to talk about today, Lauren, you are uniquely positioned as a dietitian. You also have done a lot of work in holistic nutrition, which is what our business is built on. Lots of perspectives here on the difference between nutritionist, dietitian. Nutritionist isn't even really a regulated term, so we won't get into that. But for people listening who are maybe trying to decide when to contact a dietitian versus a nutritionist, or maybe just generally how to categorize it, what's your opinion as someone who's done both worlds?
So I think, again, I have my master's in nutrition, and then I went on and did some integrative nutrition coursework. I think that being a dietitian provides you so much value because you have this extensive internship. You are exposed to so many different settings, a lot of education, and have to obviously take an exam at the end. It does give you a big leg up in terms of understanding like medication interactions, working with a team in a clinical setting. I think that there's a lot of value there. However, I do think some of the coursework can be a little bit behind the times, like when I went to school, it was low salt diet for heart health, and I think sometimes with some of more of the integrative coursework, you're able to get things more, the research that's going on now is kept up with in the coursework that you're seeing. So I would say I can't give a general, like, if you have this, go see a nutritionist. I think it's an individual case and see, I think it's great to get a referral from someone who's had an experience with that person. I would say that someone who has some more of like that functional or integrative background, like IIN or something, can be helpful. One, if it's somebody that has like a really serious, like let's say GI issue or chronic disease, I think it can be helpful to work with a doctor who also has a dietitian that works with them. So you have that whole healthcare team.
Makes sense.
Personally, that's my opinion.
That's great. That's right.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So let's dive in. We've put together 10 tips. Let's hit it.
Okay. So you want me to run through my tips?
I think so. Yeah. And we can jump in as needed if there's anything to add.
Sounds great. So I think one of the most important things that you can do with your kids to get them to be more accepting to eating is socializing. I see this all the time with friends, talking to clients, being in corporate settings, talking to people. about this exact topic. Socialization is key. Think of yourself as a grown-up, right? If you're sitting there at a table out to eat, you might be more likely to go back for seconds or try something new because you're with other people who are doing the same. It's the exact same thing with kids. You have the cousins over who never eat meatballs, but your kids eat meatballs. You'll see those kids will likely try the meatballs. So this is a huge thing that you can do. Maybe a few days, 4 days a week at least, sit down to a family dinner. It can help.
I love that. My kids love seaweed, which is one of the snacks we'll give out at the end. And they also love rice, and they also will eat salmon, usually off my plate, which is a different topic. But then we go to get sushi and they won't touch it. This was for years. And then we went to dinner one night with another family and their kids crushed sushi, and that was it. And now my kids love sushi. It's hard on the wallet. I kind of regret this.
Yeah.
Now we doubled our sushi night bill. But it really was, it doesn't matter what I say or how I offer it. It was just watching their friends eat it was all it took.
100%. I can relate to that in so many instances too. The next one is get your kids involved in prep and grocery shopping. So this is an incredible tip. Like if you go into the grocery store, sometimes I would say to my kids when they were a little bit younger, they're going to be 4 and 6, let's go into the veggie section and fruit section, and like you pick one thing that you want to try that's new, and they would like pick it together. And then we would go to the like chipper cracker aisle, and like maybe they would pick something new there too that they wanted to try that like was cool with me. So it's not, it's not always about that one thing that's like the healthier option, but just getting them involved I think is important. And then also with prep. So like my kids will, something like having them help you break the asparagus, helping you if you have like an herb garden, taking the herbs out and adding them to the food. Those sorts of things will, if they are creating it or they have made the choice to buy it, they're more inclined to have it. Okay, number 3, this I find is a great tip. So put foods in the middle of the table and serve it family style. So like that Taco Tuesday sort of thing. Or even sometimes like I'll giving your kids their own plate and then heating up a big roasted plate of vegetables and like throwing that on the middle of the table. Those sorts of things, again, they feel more independent eating what they want to eat, and everyone's kind of doing it together, which makes them much more inclined to try it.
And Kat, I know you're a fan of serving your own plate as well. Anyway, all right.
Yeah, I do I think serving yourself. But I also was heavily involved in food prep from a young age. My mom took me to the grocery store. I loved it. I helped her cook. She always gave me little tasks to do, and it was fun. She also always had the Food Network on, so we would watch cooking shows. And I think that's why I like cooking today, because that's something I've always been part of. I watched her do everything single night coming home. It was deeply ingrained in me that's just that's what you do, and then eating out is kind of more rare. But yeah, one tweak we made when I was a teenager was everybody serves themselves, and it just felt a lot better because you can kind of I want a lot of this but not too much of that, and you don't feel weird about it. I think that's a really good one for building independence.
Yeah, and it cultivates a positive relationship with food. It sounds like you had a lot of that positive interaction with food, which then led you to be passionate about it, which is our goal for our kids.
Definitely.
Which I did not really. I didn't cook. I mean, I cooked a little bit, of course, but I didn't cook much growing up, and I think that really knocked down my confidence level in the kitchen a little bit. But that doesn't stop me from involving my kids in the process as well. And even my daughter makes coffee with me. She probably makes a better latte than most of the grown-ups that I know who are intimidated by my espresso machine. So you can still get them involved even if you're not a great cook, which is something that I talk about often in my Instagram, because it shouldn't be a barrier to you eating healthy or your kids eating healthy. You don't have to be a 5-star chef.
100%. That could be I was saying with the roasted vegetable pan, taking broccoli and cauliflower out of the bag, getting them those kids' knives that they can cut it up a little bit, putting olive oil and salt, and throwing it in the oven. It doesn't have to be too complicated. Talk about how food works. This is a big one we do a lot in our family. And again, it's conversation. It's not just, talking down at them or lecturing them. It's chicken and fish and turkey and yogurt. These are foods that are good sources of protein, and protein helps to build your muscles. It helps you feel more full so you're not hungry and feeling cranky in an hour. Or things like berries and broccoli. Like those are examples of fiber-rich foods, and they help you poop. Like what kid doesn't want to talk about poop? Um, so those sorts of things. And now our kids will say, oh, I'm going to eat my protein. Like, where's my protein on my plate? And I think that that's just, it's not about ever giving a food a bad or good name so much as just educating and talking and having those conversations and empowering them with the knowledge. The next is avoid just have a bite over and over again. So I have definitely been someone who's done this before, and I've been like, this is not working out for me. And, and so, and when I say just have a bite, it's like it's a new food. It's like, let's say they haven't had asparagus, just have a bite. And it just creates a lot of stress, I think. Do you have specific experience that you want to share or
I think every parent has done that because that's how we were all raised, is like, take one bite of your vegetable or whatever. And yeah, it's a common mistake, and that's okay. Yes,
totally. We all live and learn. We're all trying to do our best. And then cut out the mindless snacking. So we bonded on this one too. I think, it's hard, like your kids are in the car, we get trained, right? I use the example. I remember I used to leave work from the hospital, and I would always just grab like some trail mix and an apple and eat it in the car. And this is like Kat was saying before, it applies to grownups too, with like the mindless grownups, adults too, with like the mindless eating. We're all just big kids, let's be real. But so I just would get in this habit of eating. I'm not even actually hungry, but I'm in the car, and it like triggers your brain to do something you were doing. And I think it's just so important, again, also for kids, because I think they can get in the car after school and they just had a snack 30 minutes ago, but then they get in the habit of having that snack, and then they're not as hungry at dinner. And it's just not great for anybody. So I think just practicing as little mindless snacking as possible. It's like, okay, are you really that hungry? Great. Let's have a good snack. Now we're not eating for 2 hours until dinner, because then you're not going to be hungry at dinner. And one, it's going to cause an argument. And two, they're going to be less likely to try the new food that you might put on their plate at that moment if they are not hungry because of the mindless snacking.
That's right.
Do kids are they in touch with their hunger cues, like hunger, fullness, like they can communicate that like accurately?
I think as they
or
get
is it more
older,
like they're cranky and then you're like, okay, you're hungry?
I think as an adult, sometimes I'm cranky and I'm like, oh my God, I'm hungry. So
yeah.
I think that it's not something that any of us are like perfect at, but I would say my older is able to say like, oh, like my stomach is starting to feel hungry, or I'm starting to feel full. I don't know. What do you think?
I was going to take that in a slightly different direction. This is something that adults, aka grown-ups, I think don't fully grasp, which is the difference between feeling like full/bloated and actually feeling satiated. And this is a problem with the kids' snacks. And so we'll plug this at the end, but we have a guide to better snack choices. But like if you give your kids Cheez-Its, and again, like nothing should be off limits per se, but if you pick up your kid from school at 5 o'clock and you give them a bag of Cheez-Its, they're not going to feel hungry, even though they are lacking all of the nutrients because they've gotten 0 of them. And so I think that is one of the confusing things where my kids will not eat what's on their plate because they snacked on a bunch of junk carbs instead of actually being just legitimately full, which is also okay. It's okay if they don't eat dinner if they're full, but it's not okay if they've been giving a bunch of processed stuff. And so that's something that, like I said, I don't think people even totally grasp until maybe having formal nutrition training. And so it's something as parents we need to watch out for with our kids to make sure they understand what hunger and satiation actually is.
Totally. A good conversation to have. And then celebrate. I just throw, when trying new food, celebrate it. I wouldn't like throw a party and like make a huge deal out of it. But we talked before, when introducing a new food to the plate, have a bunch of familiar foods. Like let's say they love the salmon or the chicken and the pasta and the broccoli, but they don't really know the asparagus again. So maybe you put like a piece of asparagus with a bunch of foods that they like, and you never know. Or again, put the asparagus on the pan in the middle of the table and see what happens. But don't make it a big deal if they don't have it. Still eat it around them. And then if they do, maybe say something later. Like, I thought that was really cool that you tried that new food today at dinner. Like, what'd you think about it? And not, again, make a huge deal, but still talk about it. The next one I have is having boundaries. So when you have a crying kid who just wants dessert, I understand that it's hard. I'm not a big fan of the clean plate club, but I also don't feel that, kids should have a cookie every single time that they eat. And I think it's a very hard line as a parent, because you don't want to create, again, any negative feelings towards food. You want them to have a healthy relationship with food, but it's also abnormal to be eating sweets all day long. So stick with your boundaries. You know what's right, and they don't need to have the cookie at every meal.
And we see that a lot. Dessert is something that's conditioned,
Yeah.
as is, having alcohol with your meal. Like there's lots of things that are conditioned. And then when you become a 40-year-old adult, it's really hard to unwind that. So yes, find that balance. The other thing I'll add, by the way, just as a parent who's been in a really bad place in the past, low on nutrients, running on fumes, a lot of these things that we do, like giving into toddler demands, is because of our own challenges. And that's okay. Like parenting is really freaking hard. And I did it in California, 3,000 miles away from like any family. And so I definitely should have asked for more help. But I gave into a lot more demands, like more snacks, more sweets, more television, all of that stuff, because I was in a bad place. And so I think it's important sometimes to look inward as well. If you're having a hard time setting these boundaries, maybe you have some work to do as well, and that's okay. We're not here to shame parents, but it is good to improve your own nutrition, your own sleep habits, your own screen time as well, so you can better impart that onto your kids.
Domino effect. I love that. All right. And then I just wrote, I just mentioned like keep no foods out of the house. Like if there are certain foods for me that I'm not a big fan of, specifically foods with tons of added sugar that are not real food, that have lots of dyes and things like that in them. However, reality, they're going to have it at a birthday party. I'm not going to create this negative conversation around it. Don't have it in the house. They're not going to have it at home. And then the last thing I mentioned is avoid talking about how they are a picky eater in front of them. I think just talking about just anything you say in front of your kids, you think they're not listening because they're playing with Legos over there, they're 100% absorbing it. The amount of times that I say something and my kids repeat it to me a week later even is insane. So I think if you feel like your kid is a picky eater, maybe talk to your partner or friend about it away from them, not in front of them, because they then identify as that. I am a picky eater. I don't eat that food. And that's only going to make it more challenging to introduce the new foods.
That's a great point.
Same thing for grown-ups too. Right? Like then you like identify as something and you're like, this is who I am,
That's right. We just did a masterclass for our clients last month on growth mindset, and not to use that type of language and everyone does, but yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Is bribing kids with food a no-no? Like, oh, if you do this, you'll get ice cream later. Like, is that setting a negative habit loop?
I think yes. I can't say I've never done it ever in my life, but
Right.
I try not to do that. I try not to make it a reward. Even like I know with potty training and stuff, sometimes people have done that, and to each his own and whatever works for you, and it's a short window of time. But I think trying to make it more about like an experience or something we're going to do together instead of it being a specific like food related thing, because then that food gets on a pedestal and it can create an unhealthy mindset down the road.
One step at a time.
Mm-hmm. That's another thing I just want to mention actually, is like we talked about 10 tips. That's a lot. I think just kind of picking sometimes one or two things to focus on for a few weeks or a month, and then maybe inserting something else is really, like, obviously, but very well in terms of adults too. That's what creates a long-term sustainable result. Not being like, oh my God, I have to change all of these things today, and how I talk to my kids, how I speak around them, how I speak about the food, how I put new foods on their plate, just start with one or two and then broaden from there.
If you've listened to this podcast at all, or Kat and I at all, then you know that we are anti like New Year's resolution crowd. Wake up January 1st, throw out all of your junk food, only eat kale salads, go to the gym 7 days a week. It's just not sustainable. It's all about small steps that make a big difference. So remember that lens. You might feel tempted today from all of Lauren's tips, like she said, to start just throwing all of these out at once, and it's probably not going to go well. It's okay. Pick one area to start. If you have questions, we'll talk about our live training at the end. We're going to do a training. You can ask Lauren some questions directly, which would be really cool for any individual struggles. So yes, don't bite off more than you can chew. You have a long time to help shape your kids. Don't worry about doing it all today. Cool. So we're going to talk about protein and fiber to wrap up. This is something that we preach every single day, Kat, 14 times a day to our clients. So important for grown-ups, which I'm going to continue to say because it's funny. But so important for kids, something that I was never educated on as a kid, and that's okay. It was a different time. So Lauren, let's dive into protein and fiber, how you focus on those with your own kids, and some tips for the grown-ups as well.
Yeah. So just like grown-ups, kids also benefit from protein and fiber, right? Because these are the two nutrients that are going to make you feel satiated. When you have a carbohydrate on its own, so let's say it's snack time, having just chips or crackers or even fruit, it's going to spike your blood sugar usually, and then your blood sugar drops, and then you crave more of these carbohydrates. And that then can feel hangry an hour later. Your mood can be a little bit more irritable. Your energy's not as great. So when you add the protein and the fiber to that carbohydrate, you tend to be more satiated, mood more stable, energy more stable, not to mention it's great for lowering inflammation. So protein-rich foods, do you want me to kind of dive into that specifically? Okay.
Yeah, why not?
So protein-rich foods, I always say the most protein-rich foods are things that are animals or many things that come from animals. So chicken, fish, turkey, beef, and then a lot of things that come from animals like eggs, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese. And then you have some protein in like lentils and beans, and I love brahmi beans, stuff like that. You have a little bit in nut butters and things, but I would say the beans and the animal-based foods are more protein-rich. Then you've got fiber. And fiber is going to be found in a variety of vegetables, lots of fruits, especially berries, things that you eat the skin of, and really any vegetable. So as much as possible, trying to incorporate some sort of protein and some sort of fiber. So when you're packing your kids' lunches, you're making dinner, you're setting up snacks for the afternoon between activities, where's the protein, where's the fibers is where I try to think. And then also, again, communicating with your kids at dinner, like, hey guys, like, where's the protein on your plate? Where's the fiber on your plate? And kind of like, just talk about it. How does it make you feel when you eat those foods? Or what do you think those foods do for your body? And have those conversations.
I love that. What do you think of, this is something that I'm doing now that I'm happy to change. We don't really say no to sweets, especially like you said, at a birthday party or something.
Yeah.
But I will tell my kids, like, listen, if you want to have some of this, it's important to have some protein first. I don't obviously get into the glycemic index with them because I think that's a little complicated, but that principle in general of, hey, prioritize protein and fiber first so you can have a sweet treat. Are you aligned with that, you think?
I love this conversation. I've had it with so many friends, clients, and just people in general. My take on it is, again, I'm not a fan of the Clean Plate Club, but I do think we have to educate our kids on nourishment. And so my feeling is, as often as possible, like, we have to talk to our kids about, these are foods that are going to nourish your body. This is the food that you need to feel good, to grow, to have your brain be able to learn new things and to get faster and like do all of these different things that you want to do. So I do say, there's some protein on your plate. There's some colorful foods that are going to fuel your body. Those need to be a priority. We're not just going to have dessert. Yep. No.
We call it grow food in our house,
I
which
love
is something
that.
that I think one of the schools called it grow food, and so we use that. And
I'm going to use that.
Very simple terms. There's snacks and then there's grow food.
Yeah, totally.
How much protein do kids need? Like, what are we going by? Body weight? Like, how do you know? I have no idea.
I don't even pay attention to the amount of grams. I just say try to incorporate it at meals and snacks. And then also just from studies showing that if you can try to incorporate it earlier on in the meal versus later in the meal, just as with adults, it can be helpful.
What if they're trying to get jacked? I'm kidding. We should do a separate podcast, by the way, on weight training for kids. Obviously not toddlers, but there was that was very anti-weight training for a long time. Like even when I was in high school, they're like, it stunts your growth. And I think that's changing, but that's a conversation for another day. I think there's a lot of
I got to learn more about that too.
Resistance training with children, especially more calisthenic stuff. Okay, well, we're going to wrap up in a second, but I want to plug that one. If you love everything Lauren has to say, which I'm sure you do, you can join a live training on February 25th. We will also record it. You can send in questions if you can't attend it, and we will try to address as many as we can. But if you come live, you can ask any questions directly. We will also put together a guide for anyone who registers for the training. We'll get a guide recapping the 10 steps that we outlined here, as well as a bunch of snacks that Lauren has put together, and just a couple more overviews of things like protein and fiber, which we talked about today. So just a one-stop resource for everything you need to raise healthy children. Lauren, anything else we didn't cover today?
I think that's it. And just know, parents, you're doing an incredible job. We're all doing our best and figuring things, learning as we go, you know?
That's right. I think it was Phil Dunphy for Modern Family said, my parents faked their way through it, and now I'm faking my way through it. And that sounds right. Most days I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm trying. So
yeah, 100%.
Cool. All right. Well, if you want more from Lauren, in addition to our training on the 25th, you can find the link to sign up for the training in my bio and Kat's bio and maybe Lauren's bio too. If you want, you can follow Lauren on Instagram at Lauren Kelly RD. That's Lauren with a R-E-N, Kelly, K-E-L-L-Y-R-D. You can follow Kat at Kat Best Wellness and me at Andrew Hayes Life. And yeah, stay curious, everybody. We'll see you for the next one.
Bye, guys. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.